No, I'm not going to preach from here. My sermon is based on Isaiah chapter 58, but I can't let a good story like this go by without making a comment. Only because as I get older, and I'm 74 years old now, so I've been around the block a few times, I know what it's like to look at people as we're going along through life. They're all over the place. And very often what we see is not the person, but something about the person. It could be the color of their skin. It could be this lady was stooped over, and I'm reminded, I saw a woman not long ago, I don't even know where it was, but she was walking like this. And I saw her, and I thought in my head, how does she do that? And there are other people who have more noticeable differences that really grab our attention because they may have been in a fire, so their faces burn. Typically, that's what happens to us. We see what stands out, and we don't see the person behind what we're looking at. This is what Jesus continually did in his ministry. Yes, he saw her stooped over, but he saw a woman who had been suffering for 18 years. And I don't know if there was back pain to go with it or just the difficulty of walking stooped over. He saw the person. It takes an effort for us. It takes an effort for us to look behind what's distracting us and see the person. I'm just reminding myself, and I'm reminding you, there's probably a neat person back there with a story about what we're looking at. And it's worth our while sometimes to go and talk to that person and hear what the story is. Faith is usually part of it. Okay, Isaiah 58. I was a teenager in high school, probably about 16 years old, and I grew up in the Lutheran church, so I was there every Sunday. When I was little, my parents made me come, and then somewhere along the line, I decided it was okay to come to church. So there I was, a teenager, but I knew the service because we kind of did the same thing back then, the same way, all the time. And I don't think my family was ever gone much on a Sunday morning, except the one time we loaded up our Chevy station wagon with tents and all kinds of things and went to see my cousins in California. That's the only vacation we ever took as a family, but it was a doozy. It was really fun, especially to pass through Yellowstone Park. And so, knowing the service, I kind of took pride on myself that I didn't have to open the book. I only had to open the book when it came to sing the hymns. I had not memorized yet all the verses of the hymns. But the liturgy, piece of cake. I had it down. And it had to be somebody who nudged me or spoke in my ear or touched my heart. But I had a moment in the worship service when I caught myself. And I asked myself, do you know what you just said, Steve? Or were you just kind of whizzing by because you knew all the words? And I had to be honest with myself. I said, I really wasn't paying much attention to what the words meant. I was just concentrating on saying the words. And this little nudge said, you better think about that. And I did. And I came to the conclusion that I wasn't paying attention to what the words were trying to tell me each Sunday. Even though they were the same words, I was not the same person every Sunday. And so from that time on, I not only said the words, but I read the words as well. I didn't want to go to sleep in my faith. You know, sometimes in our worship life and in our faith, we can become stale with the routine. And we go through the motions and forget why we do it. And unless we are given ways to renew ourselves so that we're also renewed in our faith so that it becomes fresh and exciting again. Because the message of Jesus Christ is always exciting, especially when it has something to do with us. In the routine, we can simply fall asleep and not even know until our faith is sound asleep. I'm also thinking of Ben and Allison, who I've known for a long time, and they've been married for a long time, and they have slowly drifted apart, and they didn't even know it. They became like strangers to one another living in the same house. They reached a point in their marriage when they would look at each other and ask themselves, what happened? Where did the love go? And when did our marriage start to fall asleep? Now, sometimes it's possible for a marriage to be rejuvenated and for us to reclaim the spark that still is in there somewhere that brought us together in the first place. But sometimes if neither spouse wants to change, then there's very little hope that the marriage can survive. And to make it worse, if one or the other of the spouses really believe that starting over with someone else is the only solution, then it's really hard to get them to stay together. Like any institution, and even the church, even marriage needs to be renewed as we go along because we change, both in our person and we change in our relationships with other people. And so that needs to change too. Otherwise, we can grow apart. But change is difficult and sometimes frightening. It also takes a willingness to give and not just receive, and an openness to keep the future open. It isn't done yet. We don't know everything. In other words, for the marriage to work, we can't always get our own way, but we have to make an effort to meet the needs of our partner. Okay, now we come to Isaiah 58. The prophet Isaiah was speaking to the people who were struggling to rebuild Jerusalem after its destruction by the Babylonians in the 6th century. This was a daunting job. They came from exile back to Jerusalem. And here in chapter 58, Isaiah was trying to convince them that if they could change their behavior and the attitudes rooted in their hearts, that they could renew their relationship with the Lord and make a difference in the generations yet to come. These were just a handful of the Hebrew people who faithfully practiced their faith, but they had become more focused on what they were doing And they lost the reason as to why they did it. In other words, their heart wasn't in it. And their worship had becoming like routine. Isaiah wanted to shake them up and to help them to see what they were lacking. And Isaiah in this passage refers to two specific behaviors that were not helping them. Number one, they would make life better if they didn't point their finger at other people. You know, we have to use our imagination if we want to know what this means. Usually, we point our fingers at others when we want to get their attention, or when we want to emphasize something that we're telling them. Listen. Either way, we are looking down on someone else and we're judging them for what they lack, at least from our perspective. Now imagine if we do this in our marriage. I've been married 37 years. That's a long time. I started late in life. If we do this in our marriage and we point the finger, not just once, but over and over again for several years, sometimes we call this nagging, sometimes we call this self-righteous. Either way, it does damage to our relationship because it assumes that the other person needs to change and we don't. And they hear it clearly. You can ask my wife. I'm glad she's not here to tell you. This kind of damage or this kind of behavior can even damage a church. An accusing finger becomes like the law that is used to punish you and to keep people in line. And over time, the love of God is forgotten, or worse, transformed into anger and judgment. Number two, Isaiah also accused this small gathering of Hebrews trying to rebuild Jerusalem of speaking wickedness against another. Now, in any relationship, if we're continually criticizing somebody else, they will become angry and spiteful. And again, we lose sight of God's love for us because all we hear is what they lack. And nobody lacks anything. This is an easy routine to fall into for two married people as well, or for an entire congregation. You see, whenever we're dissatisfied with something, and something's always getting our attention, we can take it out on somebody else by criticizing them and by continually pointing out to them what they lack. And if we never tell them what we like, the relationship will die for lack of warmth. What Isaiah said next is typical of all the Hebrew prophets. Isaiah gave them a mission statement. Do you have a mission statement here at St. Mark's? Do you? Yeah. Do you know what it is? Better find it. Look it up. Somewhere back, and it may have been with Will, it could have been with Ralph, people of faith came together and they decided we should identify for our congregation to remind them why it is we gather here and what's the purpose of it. Because chances are we have to do something because of this purpose. Okay, Isaiah gave the people this mission statement. at least I identify verses 10 and 11 as a mission statement. Isaiah said to them, if you offer your food to the hungry and you satisfy the needs of the afflicted, then your light shall rise in the darkness and your gloom will be like noonday. That's pretty specific. They got some marching orders there in their mission statement. With these words, Isaiah gave them a purpose other than themselves, and this is what faith does. It always points in the direction of others. This focus not only serves God, but it doesn't give us much time to point fingers at other people or to speak evil of them. We're busy doing something better. Any marriage or any congregation which intentionally serves the needs of others will not only grow in faith, but it will also thrive. And this is what Isaiah told them next in verses 12 and 13. This is what they will look like by practicing their mission statement. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong, not only inside, but the bones that hold up the church, our relationship with one another. And you shall be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. They like that. You shall raise up foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in. Isn't that beautiful? Isaiah was not only reminding the Hebrew people how faith is renewed, but was giving them hope for the future as well. And this is something that we all need. Whether we are a church or in a marriage, or the people of Israel with their hammers ready to get going building in the 16th or the 6th century BC. You see, if we keep these words in mind, what Isaiah said to the people rebuilding Jerusalem in the 6th century, they will also be true of us. By serving the needs of others, we will be raising up the foundations of many generations yet to come. I want to thank you for how over the generations you have used your gifts, your time, your money in helping other people. You see, we have opportunities to do this wherever we go. And our willingness to serve God by serving others is what makes the difference in the lives of others and in our own life as well. Amen.